Hey everyone, and a happy new year. It's time to wrap up December. I've had a good reading month, let's be honest. We also talked about goals in December, looking back at my reading for 2023 and also life goals and what I want to do in 2024. Basically, I have no clue. But anyways, we had good discussions. I loved hearing your goals and thoughts about your achievements, what happened and what you want to do. So thank you all very much for talking to me about that. Then let's get into the books. In December, as I already announced in November, I finished reading The Heaven Official's Blessing and I loved it. I just flew through all of those 8 books. They were so captivating and page-turnery that I was just sucked into the story. Heaven Official's Blessing is a fun fantasy series. Honestly, it's the most captivating fantasy that I've read in a long time. I just couldn't put it down. It was just a page-turner. So the 8 books cannot be looked at separate books. There are different story arcs that could be considered as there's a break in what's going on, but usually the books just continue with one chapter ending in one book and the next book picking up with the next chapter. And the story is not, for me, it wasn't a closed story in each book. I honestly consider the series more as one big book. There are a few story arcs in there that could be considered where normal series book breaks would be in a fantasy series, but it's so captivating, you just want to know how it goes on. So what is it about? It's set in a Chinese fantasy world or folklore mythology setting that separates the world into a heavenly realm, a mortal realm, and the ghost realm. The series mostly follows a god and a ghost king. So our main focus, or the main character that we follow that tells the story, is the god, and the story starts with him ascending for the 3rd time and causing some trouble in heaven for other gods and in general. And as the story progressed, we learn a lot more about him as a character and his history, but we also see him having trouble adapting and fitting into the heavenly realm. So like I said, he ascended and caused some trouble, so to make up for the costs and damage that he caused, he gets sent on a mission by the Jade Emperor, or the top god that is around. And so he sets out on this mission and meets people and has other things to do. That's how we start off. The whole series keeps following this idea or this concept of him going on quests and solving things and meeting people and solving and causing trouble or whatever. The stakes keep rising with everything that happens, and it gets all more intertwined, intricate. We learn a lot more about the different characters. Aside from us getting to know the god more and his quests of doing things and interacting with the mortal and the ghostly realm, as well as the heavenly realm and other gods and ghosts, we also have a ghost king that basically is at his side from the beginning, sort of, but they get more and more intertwined and connected as the stories progress, and we learn through flashbacks a lot about the past of the god and the ghost king and their relationship and whatever. So I highly enjoyed this. I'm really glad I've decided to pick up the series to end my reading year. As I read a lot of fantasy in 2023, this was the most enjoyable and captivating and fun fantasy that I read. I just couldn't put it down. Highly recommend. Then I also read another fantasy that was recommended to me by the Storygraph a lot, and I just decided, okay, I'll give in, so stop recommending it to me. It was a short novella, The Drowning Eyes, and unfortunately this wasn't a success. I did like the writing. The writing wasn't bad. I did like the idea of the world that was presented, but that was just it. It was only an idea. So I think this could be a very interesting world where you could set super interesting stories. But so far, I don't really actually know what it is. This book is about 130 pages long, but it feels like a short story. You're thrown into something and you have to figure everything out on your own. It has the length. In other novellas, there's a lot more world building, but here there is something that's called a wind speaker, so people can control storms and winds. And apparently there are feared unless they join a cult of wind speakers where their normal ice get replaced by stones. And then they are not dangerous to the world anymore. That's as far as I understand of the world. And then there are dragon ships that are raiding everything. But there's no origin for anything. So we don't know how things came to be. We don't know what the dragon ships even want and the people, aside from raiding. And we don't know any motivations for any of the characters. The characters we meet is a ship's crew who are looking for passengers, and they're of course run down and low on money because the dragon ships are ruining their business of people traveling anywhere. And then there's a wind speaker who still has her wet eyes on the run from something, and then they travel. The ending is also kind of weird. I don't really know what it wanted to do. So I think if this were a proper fleshed out novel, it would be really interesting. But there was no character development, no world building, and everything was just, I don't know. And the people were so flat that you couldn't even root for any of the characters. So yeah, that was a disappointment. The last book I read was the fourth book in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, Before We Say Goodbye. And this was a mix of things. As usual, the setup is 4 chapters with 4 people traveling back in the past. If you don't know, Before the Coffee Gets Cold is a series where people can travel back in time in a cafe with following special rules. And this is the 4th installment, and every other book I highly enjoyed. I love the series, I highly recommend it. Don't get me wrong, this book is enjoyable, but compared to the others, I felt that the 4 characters we're following were really less likable. I really don't know. The atmosphere felt different. The characters themselves felt more judgmental, more critical and questioning of the cafe and the time travel. That really put me off. And it was also hard to root for them because they were so annoyed and angry. That was a current theme, that they were annoyed and selfish and angry at other people, mostly for dying. And it was rather strange. Their motivation to go back into the past was mostly because they wanted to change what happened. But one of the rules is that you cannot change the present. So you can go into the past, tell and talk to the people there, but whatever you do, you cannot change how the present is. So if someone died due to an accident, you cannot warn them of the accident and they will be alive in the present. That doesn't work. They will still be dead. And that was mostly the main reason why all of them wanted to travel back. I also had the feeling that the time the stories took place were not chronological with what happened in the books before. So these 4 stories in the long term of things, as far as I remember, fit more after the first book. So I'm not sure if these were all new stories or if these were stories that were written in the same scenario and world, but were never published before, but now were freshened up and published, which isn't a bad thing because this is not a time-sensitive series. But it felt off. There were quite a few things about this book that felt off. Also how they talked about the rules. And so I'm not sure. I did like the outcome of each time travel and what the persons took away from that and how their present changes, because even though the present doesn't change, the person that comes back is a changed person, and that's what I like about the series. So I don't know, definitely going to read a 5th book if ever there will be one, but start with book 1. Highly enjoyable and really recommended. It is very repetitive, as I always repeat and retell the rules, but if you don't mind that, you're going to enjoy it. And that brings us to the audiobooks I listened to in December. They were a strange mix. I listened to A Room with a View, and I was mostly motivated because I haven't read anything by the author before. I was curious, and it was free in the Audible Plus catalog. So I started it and I didn't really know what it wanted to tell me, and I wasn't really invested, but I also was so distracted and tired in the beginning of December still that I didn't really mind that I wasn't into the story. I honestly couldn't tell you what the story actually is about. It's something I forgot, but I never really grasped it. But reading something about the author and his writing really helped me understand the book a bit more and enjoy it more. So it's more about how he writes about the people and the look at the people, and that was fun. So even though I couldn't tell you listen to this for the story, for the writing it was immensely enjoyable, and the audiobook was well done, but that was the main thing. And then my battery died, so it's a day later and I'm too lazy to refilm everything. So let's continue with the next book I listened to, which was In Ascension. And basically, I have no idea what to listen to. I added this book to my wish list a month ago when people started first talking about it, and it got glorious high reviews of people saying it changed their lives. It was wonderfully written and it was so deep and insightful and all the things that you want in a book. And it was also in consideration for the Booker Prize, if I remember correctly. So it did come with a lot of great references, and I just don't know. I decided for the audiobook because first of all it's a big book and I really heard positive things about the audiobook, and you know me, big books and audiobooks work better. So I can't say the audiobook was bad. I'm definitely sure the audiobook is what made me finish the book, but I don't know if I might have enjoyed the writing more if I had read it. I would never have finished it, but I probably would have understood what the people meant with the writing, because that's the first thing I didn't see. I didn't see the writing as great. A lot of it just felt info-dumpy. So I'm trying to summarize the story, but honestly, I have no idea what this book wanted to do. We follow this woman, this Dutch woman, who is a microbiologist, and we hear a lot about her family relations, how she was abused by her father growing up, how she saw the relationships between, or the relation to her family, her sister, her mother, her father, and this keeps showing up throughout the book. And also we see her professional life, how she starts studying, how she's part of some expedition when something was discovered in the water. It sounds a little bit like I may have missed something there in the beginning, because I was listening while I was cycling on a busy street, and I don't know if something landed on Earth or if they just discovered something, but there was something in the water where there was a new depth growing, and she went on this expedition and things went from there, and then her career continued, and it all ended up sort of being more in connection to space travel, and she developed or researched algae to make it space food. That's what I got. Blah blah things happened, and at the end we get a chapter from her sister's perspective, and we get a different view of the main character that we haven't had before. But all of that, it was so bland, it was so monotonous. The narration just droned on. That's why my mind blanked out a lot of times. I don't even know why it had to be this long and these different parts. The characters, I felt them flat. None of the characters you could really latch onto. They were not interesting. Even the main narrator we've come to know most of and best, nothing in her made her interesting or deep or even showed that she was growing or something. She was mostly selfish and blaming everyone else for how bad her life was as a childhood, and her parents and the abuse. And later on we learn from her sister that she never really saw it that way, and also see somehow from her sister that she kind of thinks that her sister is exaggerating or dwelling on these things a little bit. So I really don't know what it wanted to do there. When it comes to the sci-fi stuff, the space travel and all the ideas of, oh, I don't even know, is it first contact? Is it space travel? I don't know. I don't know what it wanted to do, and it was so boring that none of it kept you interested. I honestly finished this because I heard people saying that the ending was the rewarding part of the novel, which I find rather unfair for a 500-page novel. But honestly, I didn't get it. I didn't see the writing great. I didn't find or hear anything new or groundbreaking that hasn't been discussed in other science fiction media, content, books, films, whatever. And also, I looked at reviews afterwards, and I saw some people talking about the way it talks about the human condition and blah. And I'm just like, I must have missed that. Either I completely missed everything, or this book is completely overrated, or it's only literary people enjoying it who have no idea what is happening in other genres. I don't know. If you've read it, let me know what you thought. I cannot recommend this. Ignore the hype. Which brings us to our last and final book of December, and that was another self-help, self-improvement book, Feel Good Productivity, and it's from a YouTuber. If you've known his channel, then you've probably heard a lot of the content and heard him talk about the book a lot. I mainly pre-ordered it because I wanted to support the channel, as I quite like his content, and I enjoyed the audiobook. It was, 5 hours or so. I really listened to it on the weekend because it just came out at the end of the year, and I wanted to finish it in 2023 and also use it as a little inspiration to how to start and maybe find ideas for what I want to do with 2024. And I must say, I really enjoyed the audiobook. It was very well narrated. It was fun to listen to. I also enjoyed the content. Like I said, a lot of the stuff you find in the book, you've probably seen him mention or talk about on his channel, but it's a nice collection of his ideas and philosophy when it comes to productivity and adding fun and positive elements to the whole thing, and not just discipline and focus on the motivation and things. So I really already like his philosophy behind all of this. And I also especially enjoyed the last part where he focused on burnout and the different kinds of burnouts that he talked about and how to deal or tackle it. And I enjoyed that because that was actually the most useful content on burnout that I've heard or found. And so that was really good for me. What I also really liked is that it reminded me of how important it is to do the things that make you feel good. And for some of that, I have my habits and all the things that I created. And I know that if I do them, I feel good, but sometimes they feel just too strict. But I know if I don't do them or don't follow those habits, then I feel worse. It was good to hear that there is actually reason to that working, and being reminded of that I should pay more attention to those tasks that make me feel better instead of just trying to reach something and ignoring those. So I highly recommend it if you're interested in any of these things and want to have a different look at some productivity tips that he's talking about. And that was all my reading. Like I said before, in 2023, I had a really good reading year. I'll put the stats at the end for the whole year, not just for December. And I'm happy with the books I read. I'm happy with the amount I read. And before I go, I want to thank you all for sticking with me for 2023 and watching my videos, commenting and sharing the interest in the books that I've read and everything else I've talked about. Thank you all very much. You're also part of the positive things of 2023. So thank you very much. And now I would love to hear from you how your reading in December was, or overall in 2023. What is a book that you would call your favorite? You know me, I don't do favorites. I can't decide. I can say like I like that, but favorites, I'm not good at that. But I love watching favorites lists. So if you have books that you think I should add to my wish list for 2024, let me know in comments. Thank you all for watching. Bye bye.